All right, everybody, we are back, or more specifically, I am back. It is Seth from D-Side Stories. I'm rolling solo again this week. Actually, kind of just a wrap-up from the things that have been going on over the past week and a half or so. Some exciting times for D-Side, continuing to cover festivals, but also starting to speak to bands and explore a little bit more of what this podcast can be. So as Scott kind of gets reacclimated to being back here in the States and thinking about what our next move is here for D-Side, I wanted to just kind of fill folks in on what I got after on my summer vacation, aka last weekend at the festival. So as we mentioned before, and as you heard in the intro, we had our Sacred Rose Festival coverage happening all across last weekend. So that was Friday through Sunday. I myself was there all 3 days, both as a patron to really enjoy myself and explore what was a really cool concept for a festival, and to do a little bit of capital J journalism. We did, like I said, we had an interview with a band that played the festival on Saturday, which you'll hear at the back end of this podcast, and then just kind of my general observations, which really what I wanted to share with you now. We did the same thing and got great reaction from Lollapalooza. I think it's sort of funny to reflect upon the experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, and just come at it with just a bit of a funny point of view and kind of share what we saw. I was solo, so I wasn't able to do as many on-site videos and kind of live reactions, so I'll try to give those to you here. But let me just say, overarching, first of all, thank you to all the folks at Sacred Rose who took care of us, took care of me, and really hooked up Media Pass, were super helpful on site, and are doing something really cool that I hope they continue to do in the future. So jumping into the fest and my personal experience with it. First off, really great setup logistically. It's the same setup and I think even the same equipment as North Coast Festival, kind of rebranded, but not necessarily modified all that much. And there was really no reason to. They've clearly got the space out in Bridgeview at the Chicago Fire's practice complex pretty dialed in. There were 4 stages total, kind of if you can picture 2 that are side by side in the main field, one kind of adjacent to it, and then the actual bubble dome, which they called the laser dome, which I'll get to, was an absolute blast and a really cool usage of a unique space. So these were on these practice fields, so unlike Lollapalooza or many other festivals that can get muddy, that can get dusty, this is almost completely on field turf or AstroTurf, so very comfortable. You can take your shoes off. People were putting blankets down everywhere, and it almost felt more like kind of a picnic or a gathering than an intense festival than past experiences I've had. Very laid back, incredible people watching. I would say, generally speaking, the crowd skewed a bit older, but not old. There was kind of people my age, kind of early to mid-30s, jam band enthusiasts, let's call them. But then there definitely was that older kind of deadhead contingency. There was a little bit of dressing up for the festival, kind of wearing your craziest, space girl outfit or whatever, and hairstyles and body glitter, but it was much more subdued than what I had seen at Lollapalooza. Still people super into it, but it was a much different vibe. It was less see and be seen and kind of be with your crowd, and much more about a focus on the music. So for me, I appreciated that as someone who maybe felt a little bit old at Lollapalooza solo. The sound quality itself was great, super easy to navigate and very dialed in. I think the first day there was a bit of sound bleed where you'd have one band playing a very low-key acoustic set, and then in the distance there was someone who would kind of play over them. But I give a lot of credit to the festival organizers because they kind of heard that feedback, I think probably from artists as well as patrons, and they adjusted the set times on Saturday and Sunday to reflect that, to where there was very little overlap. So if you were hearing your band, you weren't getting, 20% in a distance of the band playing across the field. So they were very thoughtful, and I think to change that on the fly was probably not an easy thing to do, and went a long way in terms of appreciating the sound quality, which, like I said, was pretty dialed in. A hugely diverse set of food choices, vendors from out of town. Just while I was there, I had, Mexican street corn, wood-fired pizza, burritos. It sounds like just all stuff you'd have drunk on a Saturday night, but for me, that was my food across the weekend, and it was phenomenal. So being able to give that choice, and not just have kind of the obvious street fest easy options, was a really cool touch, and I think people really appreciated that. Now into the music itself, and I'll be short and sweet. I did a whole preview episode on this, but just kind of my reactions. I had talked about, obviously, Phil Lesh, this kind of Philco, combo set with a few members from Wilco. Really did a nice job with that. They played 2 full sets. They had guests on. I just, off the top of my head, I'm thinking about a version of Jack Straw they played with a flute solo, which doesn't sound cool, but it was incredibly awesome to hear. As someone who's heard 9 million versions of it, this one really stuck out to me. So it was well orchestrated in integrating different types of artists while still staying true to the sound of The Dead, of Phil Lesh's solo stuff, and of Wilco. So mixing of those really brought, that was probably the biggest audience I saw of the weekend, and the most diverse as well. I also was really impressed. I mentioned them on my preview episode, but City and Color really delivered for me. Impressive performance. I don't know that I had known the depth of their songbook, and I'm told they played some of the songs sort of in an older arrangement, kind of for the original versions that came out maybe 10 years ago. That show in particular not only impressed me, but seemed to pull in a lot of folks from elsewhere, from other stages, kind of just hearing it from the distance and pulling them in to check it out. But really great experience, an absolutely picture-perfect day to have a show. Day 2 was a little bit lighter. The kind of some that stuck out to me, I saw Sun Squabby by total accident, and it was a really phenomenal show, great energy. And once again, kind of early in the day, but was pulling people in who may have otherwise just been wandering around just because they sounded so good from afar. Disco Biscuits were great. And then I mentioned Dead Inside. I know them well from Chicago. But they had this thing called the Laser Dome, which was in the middle of the day, pitch dark, smoke machines everywhere, and lasers. And if you pair that up with extremely well curated vinyl Grateful Dead, that is a great way to take a break in the middle of the day on a hot one, because it was air conditioned, it was lovely, and it was just a very laid back atmosphere. There was a guy in knee pads doing slides all around the field turf. He was about 50 years old. That guy was definitely my hero, but he was appreciating it far more than even I was. Day 3 was a little crazier, kind of trouble from the beginning with storm warnings and high winds. I know around 4 o'clock we got evacuated from the Laser Dome because there was concerns of high winds and the danger that posed. I was very much looking forward to hearing Dawes play at the fest. They get delayed by 30 minutes, followed by a cancellation 2 songs into the set. And the festival, frankly, was kind of functionally over after that. I think the organizers did a great job of communicating what was happening, but also it was a bit of a stressful time and people not knowing what was next. So it got a bit cut short. And I know at a certain point there's only so much you can do, but I think they kind of did the best with the hand they were dealt. And luckily the rest of the weekend was beautiful. So I think at that point there was a little bit of credibility built up. I also had the benefit of going to the Dawes after show, which, due to the craziness of weather and questioning whether or not they were going to go back on, didn't start until about 12:45 on Sunday night, which is a school night for me at least, and ended at about 1:30 a.m. So phenomenal show for the 400 or so who snuck in. Absolutely worth staying up past your bedtime for, but just shows you kind of some of the chaos in a beautiful way of the weekend. And so once again, tip my cap to the organizers of Sacred Rose. I think the lineup they cultivated and the vibe and the ease of entry and exit showed that these guys really know how to put on a festival, and looking hugely forward to see what they're doing in the future, and happy to partner with them on this. Now, before we jump into the interview, I just wanted to give a little context for kind of who we spoke to, why we did it, etc. So on Sunday, I spoke with Mickey Kellerman, who's the principal songwriter and synth player for the Chicago electropop band Syzygal. Now, Syzygal is a relatively new group, kind of out of, kind of emerging from a few Chicago bands from the past. Before Syzygal, Mickey and their drummer Darren Heights were in the Chicago group Future Rock, that was kind of, very synth heavy, had their own song, had the own songs that they wrote, but then also had quite a few covers and remixes of songs, people like Daft Punk, and very popular on the Chicago scene. I'm talking 15 plus years of shows. So these guys are veterans to the industry and to the scene. But this was actually their very first performance as a group. Mickey told me that They had about 2 days of practice leading up to the festival before jumping in and debuting their, sharing their debut album the first time, the album's called Right Path. It was released in February, but this was the live debut. So really excited that I got to watch. Really excited that I got to speak to Mickey a bit about what the group does, kind of their formation, their writing process, and the future plans for what the future holds for Syzygal. So I think there's some exciting stuff, definitely in the next 6 to 12 months that they've got in mind, but I'm really appreciative that I was able to chat with them as they find their voice and as they're at the ground floor here of what this band can do, but with really strong production, haunting vocals, almost a little bit of an industrial feel on certain songs. But this is an electropop album, absolutely worth checking out. Chicago local Syzygal. So without further ado, here is my interview with Mickey Kellerman, the principal songwriter of Syzygal. Thanks, guys. Yeah, one of the things that jumped out at me is that this project kind of seemed to be born out of the pandemic, right? And you guys are you'd collaborated let me remind me.
Yeah, I can tell you the...
Yeah, with Darren, but yeah. So tell me a little bit about the origin of the group. I know it's a very recent project, so tell me more.
Absolutely. So, Darren, our drummer, and I played in Future Rock together for like 15 years.
Yes.
So I've been playing with Darren since 2004, so very comfortable playing with him. We have like a very comfortable chemistry together. And Anna, who really I write all the music with, so she, I met her through some mutual friends maybe about like 8 years ago.
Okay.
When I was still in Chicago. And the last album with Future Rock, we started writing together. So we wrote 4 of the songs on the last Future Rock album were written by Anna and I.
Got it. And was she performing on them, or was she just a songwriter with you? Because that group was mostly, it was 5 of you maybe?
Yeah. It was just three.
Got it.
We had like her backing tracks. We would actually play those songs without her performing with us. Really? When we were on the road. Yeah, it was a little weird, but I think it worked.
Cool way to start, yeah.
But we had her perform with us a number of times at like the bigger shows. So like at North Coast Music Fest, she performed with us a few times.
Yes.
Summer Camp Music Fest, Halloween. So I did have a chance to perform with her before we started this project as well.
Got it. So you knew there was a dynamic there before it was made official.
Yeah. I had tried to write in the past with other lyricists, and I never found someone that I had like a really easy chemistry with.
Yes.
And the second that I started trying to write with Anna, like the first song we tried to write, I sent her like a song I had written, and like a few days later she sent me back like a finished vocals and lyrics and everything, and it was like I was like blown away. I was like, okay.
And not only was it finished, but it was good and it resonated with you lyrically and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's really interesting too, because I know kind of previous to your group now, she was really doing like folk stuff.
Yeah.
It was kind of a different universe altogether. So it's an intro. My question was how you kind of came together. Yeah.
And she still has her band, Anna Soltis and the Familiar.
Yep.
They're not super active, but like I know they're like working on an album right now, and she plays every once in a while. So yeah, she comes from that kind of folk sensibility. But we've talked about this a lot. I think that she likes to write like using mantras and like using repetition, and so I think in the back of her mind she always was interested in getting into the electronic space.
It's very conducive, 100%. Yeah.
And so and I've been into electronic music since college, and really like have a passion for it. So I think because she like has that sensibility, it was a very natural fit for her to start writing dance music.
Absolutely. No, it fits in beautifully, and I think even the way you guys present her vocals on the album is very different than how she plays. It's kind of almost like haunting.
Yeah.
And I think the way you've built that into it, kind of floating around the synths rather than like being very forward in her folk, is a really perfect way to utilize how she writes.
And so that's all her really writing around it, right? Because like I write all the music, but then I just send it to her, and so she'll write the vocals around and the melodies around what I've done. So if we're successful in having the vocals going around the synths, it's only because of her, not me.
Got it. Well, happy to give her credit like that.
Yeah.
So you guys really do have kind of an Elton John, Bernie Taupin, like separate writing. I'll do the music, you build the lyrics off of it, and that's worked for you guys.
Yeah, it worked great. Yeah.
I was gonna say, it also made me think of that, like the first Postal Service album, where like we never met, we just sent files back and forth.
It's funny you say that. I've thought about that before, because I'm very familiar with like the origin story of that album, and that's exactly right. Now they were of course sending like in the mail, and that's how they came up with the name of their band.
Yes. Yeah.
Thankfully now we have digital technology, and she can just upload vocal files that she records on her laptop.
Yes.
And then I can download them and get them right into my into my digital audio workspace that I use.
Exactly. We do our podcast typically remotely, not always, but much more simplified, of course. But the fact that we can do it and feel like we're in the same room and have it sound good, it's pretty incredible what you can do. So awesome that you guys are taking advantage of that. So this was the first show you guys have played together as a group, right?
It was, yeah. And so we've been working on the project really for the last 3 years.
Okay.
We started before the pandemic, actually. So there was 2 songs that we kind of wrote in 2019, and then there was 3 songs that we wrote in 2020 between January and February. So
Got it.
Before the shutdown.
Yes.
So we had most of the songs on the first album were written before the shutdown happened.
Got it.
The last 3 songs, I think, we wrote right in the thick of that shutdown.
Got it. And did that shape the content at all, or the mood, or the feel? Yeah, it had to, right?
Those songs are edgier for sure. I mean, it was like around like when all that protests were happening around like George Floyd killing, and
yes.
And so that was like when we were I was writing the music for it around that time, and like, you know, between the shutdown and like the uncertainty of what the heck was going on with the pandemic, and then like that summer with just like tensions being very high.
Yeah.
It was hard not to like have.
It bleeds into everything you do. It bled into my like working life and all those things, 100%.
Of course, yeah.
So very cool. So tell me a bit about like how the album came together. You talked a bit about that, kind of playing back and forth. But like, what were your influences and inputs? Obviously, you were in that electronic world before, but to my ears, this project sounds much different than what you're doing in future rock.
It does, yeah. And okay, so the origin of it for me, and it wasn't like I didn't like actually intentionally think of this. It just kind of like happened as I was like writing. But like I became really obsessed with synth bass, bass synth, and really wanted to explore anything that I could do in writing bass lines and crafting sounds using bass synthesizer. I knew that I wanted to still be dance music. That's, again, you know, I just love dance music and I love dancing, and that's what gets me excited when I'm writing.
Yes.
And then obviously bringing in the vocals. So that was like, you know, and I wanted it to have acoustic drums. I have an appreciation for like EDM, you know, some of the, you know, the electronic music that uses only sampled drums.
Yep.
But I wasn't as interested in making music that way.
Yes.
I really wanted Darren to be a part of the project, and I wanted his powerful drumming to be a part of the project.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of like the genesis of the sound. Now it's kind of like taken a life of its own as I started writing, and I think it's evolved. We've recorded a whole another album already.
Wow, I was gonna ask you about the future of it. We'll get to that question, but you guys are already hard at work.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it was really, the idea was for it to be a 3-piece. I wanted to play, you know, as far as like the live performance, because I wanted to be the one to play bass, which I didn't in Future Rock.
Got it.
So that was like a big difference, was like wanting to take the role of the bass player.
Got it.
In the band.
And you're playing it both via synth and live bass, like 4-string?
No, I just play
just synth. Got it. Okay. Okay. That's what I figured. Synth. But when you said I wanted to play bass, I was like, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Just synthesizer.
Got it.
And so, you know, I write all the different synthesizer parts for the music, and there's like, it's not just bass synthesizer. There's obviously like mid-range, and there's melodies that are played on synthesizer. There's kind of like rhythmic stuff that's played on synthesizer as well.
And you guys played yesterday as a 5-piece, or you had others? 6-piece.
Yeah. So we ended up on the first album. We brought in a guitar player, this guy Justin Canavan, who's a local. He's in Chicago. Just, I mean, like a wonderkid. I mean, he is a superstar guitar player. He actually tours with Jamela Woods.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of his main gig right now. But he does a lot of session work, and so we recorded the album at Rackstrack Studios, where Anna's like very, very close friends with Rick Barnes, who owns Rackstracks.
Yes.
And so he kind of took us on as like a passion project for him, and helped us with the production, mixed everything, recorded everything. So he knows Justin. He knows Justin from Columbia College. I think he taught a class that Justin took and met him that way.
Got it.
So I had mentioned to Rick as we were working on the album, I'm like, I think there's some songs that need some guitar, and I was kind of interested. We never did any guitar with Future Rock, and I was interested in exploring bringing that sound to the table as well. So Justin came in and recorded on 4 songs. I mean, it just blew me away what he was able to do. And then on our new album, Justin recorded on every song. So
really?
He's on all 5 songs. So I was like thinking about the show, and I I mean, we could pull off the show without having a live guitar player, but I think as you know, when we're thinking about doing performances, as much as we can, I want to have live guitar because I really want the performance to be as live as possible.
Totally.
We do have some backing tracks that are playing, but that's mostly because we don't have another keyboard player. So like some of the synth parts, there's no other way to for us to perform the music without having those as backing tracks.
Totally. And I will say all the videos I saw of the future rock stuff, that's what really struck me is if I was just listening to this just from Spotify, I wouldn't know that it was being played live, but seeing it played live enhances the experience so much, especially at the live performance. So how did it feel yesterday? Like obviously this is sort of the first road test of this band playing together with these songs. So, what was the feeling?
Yeah, and so we had to get, so anyways, so I'll tell you about that. But I wanted to go back and say, so for the performance yesterday, so we had obviously Anna, Darren, and I, but then we had Jonah Brooks, who Justin wasn't able to play the show. So Jonah is a buddy of his and also is a professional musician in Chicago.
Got it.
So Jonah played guitar, and then two of Anna's really close friends, Raquel Quadreni, hard name to say, and Amy Soraya did backing vocals.
Very cool.
So on the album, Anna does all the vocals.
All the layering, I can hear that. It sounds amazing.
And but we wanted to bring have other people sing as well with us when we perform live.
Yes.
So leading up to the show, I'll be honest, it was very stressful getting everything ready. I have a completely new setup, and I was, over the last few months just trying to get used to it, get a comfort level with it. I have two new synthesizers that I use that are both analog synths.
Wow.
That I literally bought a few months ago.
Yeah.
And so just being comfortable with that. So we took a very ambitious approach to this show. We had never played with Jonah before.
I was going to say, did you guys have the opportunity to even rehearse the show together?
We did. So on Wednesday and Thursday, we had a total of 14 hours of rehearsals together. That was the first time we ever played together.
That's crazy.
And then we played the set on Saturday. Now, by the end of our second rehearsal on Thursday, the last time we ran through it, I was like, okay, we got this.
This is tight.
I've performed enough to know, if we're going to be able to, put on a good show or not.
Yeah, if you're in deep shit or not, basically.
Yeah. So I felt as prepared as we possibly could be going into it. But with festivals, you have a shorter setup time once you get the stage, so there's always that element. And you're working with a monitor engineer who doesn't know you or anything. We did bring our own sound engineer for front of house, which helped. It went so well.
That's awesome.
On Saturday, it went as well as I could have hoped for. We had probably 200 or 300 people at the set, which exceeded my expectations for being
for a band that no one's played before. No one's seen play before. Yeah.
And for a first show, the feedback that I got, and it was very heartening to hear this, was people were like, "I can't believe that was your first show." It sounded like you guys have been playing together forever.
Yeah, and in bringing in obviously seasoned musicians and a few of you having worked together before, I'm sure helped a lot.
It did.
But I was wondering, kind of when you walked up stage, how were you buzzing off of it? You're like, that was exactly how I wanted. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough.
And I'm sure the stuff that you heard, other people didn't pick. You know what I mean? The little things. It's all noise, at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, first of all, I feel blessed that they reached out to us and offered the time slot to us.
Yeah.
I know, Michael Berg, who's basically running
the North Coast guy as well. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a really good friend of mine. So
very cool.
I didn't have any expectation. I knew he was doing this festival.
Yeah.
I didn't have any expectation that we would get to play on it because we haven't even played before.
I was gonna say, yeah. Were you hoping / planning to tour this album at some point together or play shows? Was your thought we're gonna put this out, see the reaction to it, and figure it out later? The fact that they reached out to you and you kind of weren't looking to book shows. I'm curious what your vision was before this happened.
Yeah. Well, I love performing live, so the plan was always to play shows and play festivals. In my mind, I was like, it's going to take us 3 to 5 years of trying to play shows and build a following before we'll get an opportunity to play a festival like this.
Yeah.
With Future Rock, we played North Coast Music Fest the first 5 years that it was around. We played Suwannee Halloween, we played Summer Camp Music Fest. We've played huge festivals and huge performances, so we had that experience, but I still, in my mind, I'm starting over from scratch here.
Yeah.
But I think in reality, that's not true. And I didn't appreciate that, which is no, people know, Darren and I have credibility from all the stuff that we did. I think that people...
And being really a Chicago-based band, too.
Yeah, correct, right? Yeah. And so I think people believed in us in the sense that, if we give them this opportunity, it might be a little ambitious, but like they'll deliver.
And yes, they're not going to fall on their face. This is not their first rodeo, and you guys are well positioned to be successsul.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So you talked about, you got ahead of me a little bit with what's next, but so you've got one album already in the can recorded.
We do.
Do you have a vision for like timeline of release? Your last one came out in February, right?
It did, yeah. So I don't envision that we'll release it this year.
Yeah.
I mean next year for sure, and probably if I had to guess right now in the spring, summer time frame. So my goal is, as we're thinking ahead, like what do we do next? First of all, I want to do a proper Chicago club show.
Yeah.
So
do you have a venue in mind?
I have a few.
Yeah, I figured it might have crossed your mind already.
Yeah. I mean, I've played a lot of the venues in Chicago already. I want to try to find a place where I don't want to like play a show. I play a venue that's too big and then like not filled.
Totally, it's the vibe is off, right?
Yeah,
you want to make sure that
The first venue that came to mind was Shuba's. I mean, if that would be playing it safe to a certain extent, but I think we could probably fill that room.
Yeah, and it's a great. I live about a 15-minute walk from Shuba's. It's a great spot. Yeah,
I've played there before. It's a great room. It's a great first venue to play in Chicago.
Yeah, it's one of those. I feel like multiple bands I've seen at Shuba's, I'll see them 2 years later, and they're at the Vic or something, or they're at it's a perfect place to start.
The other one that I would love to play is Lincoln Hall. That's a little bit bigger, but like also a venue that we've played before.
And same family, so I'm sure you got relationships with those guys, or same group.
Yeah, exactly. And part of it will be like the availability of the room and stuff like that.
Totally. And are you thinking of that Chicago hometown show before the release of the next album? And are you now that you've had kind of some success and it's resonating with live audiences, do you foresee something where you have 10 dates next summer behind the next album?
Yeah, so that's the other thing I really want to do is play more festivals next summer and get in front of more people. That was the way that Future Rock really built a following. It was like Summer Camp Music Festival was like instrumental. So many people that I run into that when I mention Future Rock are like, oh, I saw you guys at Summer Camp. Oh, I saw you guys at Summer Camp. I mean, it's an unbelievable amount of people saw us there.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's that festival or some other regional festivals, I think that is the way for us to like start to build a fan base.
Yeah.
I would love to do some shows around the Midwest, club shows around the Midwest as well.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna really try hard to like find a good pairing where we can open for a band that's bigger than we are.
Yep. And just get some eyeballs that wouldn't have otherwise found you guys. Yeah.
So it's gonna be a combination of all of those different things. And again, it's my job is to like start talking with people and getting the word out that we want to collaborate and do shows with people and seeing what comes from that.
And I think you guys have done a great job from what I've saw of like even like posting your like interviews with each other for breakdown of each song. Like that's like as someone who nerds out on that stuff and understanding like the guts of how songs come together, I think it's brilliant to really kind of let people in on your process and a great way to promote what you're doing.
Yeah, we Ann and I.
Anybody sit here? Can I sit here?
We're just finishing up an interview.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. 5 minutes probably. It's all yours.
No problem.
Thank you.
So like Ann and I like were very intentional about like we worked really hard leading up to the release of the album.
Yep.
And it was stressful of how much work we put into it, like doing those interviews. And I kept telling Anna, I'm like, listen, there's probably at the beginning not a lot of people are going to watch this, but I'm like, we're doing this for down the road more than right now. Like we need to build content on our YouTube channel because what we want to have happen is when we do go out and play festivals and people see us, we want them, they're going to, people who are interested in it are going to want to go back and like
learn more,
see some of the content.
Yes.
And that's when it's going to be really important to have that stuff up there.
100%. Like, if someone wants a deep dive, give them something to deep dive into, right?
Correct.
Yeah. You have a great eye towards that. Frankly, even for the stuff we're doing for the podcast, it's the same idea. It's like we know the listens are, or the views on YouTube are low, but we want to do audio, we want to do video, we want to bring in interviews, and so kind of having a kind of a long-term vision for how the project comes together. I think you guys are being super wise about that. So,
and that's, I mean, I've been around the block before, so I learned a lot from Future Rock, and so I'm trying to be even smarter about, and things are, the importance of like online and social media is greater than it was back when we were doing Future Rock.
Even a few years ago,
Yeah, and so we're just trying to be really smart about it and have a good plan. And, it's at the end of the day, it's like you can only do so much. It has to resonate with people, and people have to like get excited about it for you to like really get very far.
100%.
And you can't really control that.
Yes, but I think the music and the album that you guys have put out, I think is bound to resonate with people once they hear it. It really, again, you guys reached out to me and it worked out wonderfully, and I'm glad that we got to speak. But I probably listened to the album 4 or 5 times in the past week.
Oh, nice.
And I really, really dig it.
Thank you.
Love it. So I'm bummed he's not here, but my partner in the podcast actually he's American, he's from California, but he spent about 3 years DJing in Manchester in England as doing like deep house electronic stuff, and is super into like a lot of the records that I've inherited from him, that I have, like all of his like beat stuff really was along the same like vein as what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
And so I might even maybe connect you guys at some point, because I think you'd have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always down to like talk to people about music and carve out time for that. So like, if you want me to go on the podcast sometime and talk to him, I would be down.
I was thinking that same thing, because I think at some point we want to almost kind of do like a little bit of a history deep dive, whatever you want to call it, of like electronic dance, house kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And bringing on guests who really has a first-hand experience of that, I think we may take you up on that offer if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all.
Good deal.
Yeah.
All right, man. I think that's perfect. I love that we got this.